You've probably heard of the Group of Seven, but who were they and why were they so important? In this video, we're going to introduce you to the members of this renowned Canadian art collective, tell you their story, and just why they are the most important artists of our country's history. The first thing to know about the Group of Seven is that it actually had 10 official members over the years. I know, tricky, right? The original members of the group were Lawren Harris, A.Y. Jackson, Franklin Carmichael, Frederick Marley, Arthur Lismer, J.E.H. MacDonald, and Frank Johnston. Johnston would leave the group in 1924, being replaced by A.J. Casson. Edwin Holgate joined as the 9th member in 1930, and the last member, L.L. Fitzgerald, was invited to join the group in 1932. Although officially formed in 1920, the group worked together without the name a decade earlier. In 1912, the first traces of the group's subject matter appeared in the work of the famous Tom Thomson. If you don't know the story of Tom Thomson, here's the rundown. Tom Thomson was an employee at Grip Limited, the same commercial art firm that Lismer, Carmichael, Varley, and Johnston all worked at. The gentlemen painted alongside each other, but it was Thomson who discovered the wild terrain of Northern Ontario, introducing what would later be referred to as painter's country to the other artists. Tom's depictions of this vast and rugged landscape inspired the Group of Seven's future members. It was these paintings that led to the initial idea of the collective, but Thomson passed away before the group was formed. On July 8, 1917, at just 39 years old, he disappeared during a canoeing trip in Algonquin Park, and his body was discovered 8 days later. There's a lot of speculation and mystery as to the cause of his death. Was it an accident or perhaps foul play? But Thomson undoubtedly left a huge impact on the Group of Seven and would have been a member had he survived. His introduction to the expansive wilderness led his fellow artists to fall in love with depicting its scenes. The men would gather their paintbrushes and easels and head into some of the most remote parts of the country to capture never-before-seen locations of Canada. These guys matched themselves against forces of nature, willing to endure any hardship necessary to capture the perfect image. They spent weeks at a time in the bush, camping until snow drove them out. Their approach to painting was experimental, arising from a need to develop a style that reflected both the rugged landscape of the country as well as its young and vigorous spirit. They worked to create a visual language that was distinctly Canadian. It may not seem so now, but these paintings were seen as acts of rebellion at the time, and the Group of Seven were rebels. Most Canadian artists were representing Canada as if it were Europe. The Group of Seven were presenting a whole new style, but their lack of finish compared to the work of traditional 19th century painters was met with criticism. Their first exhibition was on May 7, 1920, and of the 120 pieces shown, only 6 sold. The work, however, did garner attention. The bold interpretations of the Canadian landscape were something audiences had never seen before. The Group of Seven had given birth to a new movement of art. By 1923, their modernist vision had started making headlines, and while at home critics remained unconvinced, from abroad the acclaim was overwhelming. Canada had its own national style. The group would go on to spend over a decade painting together. They traveled across the country from BC to Nova Scotia, even venturing to the Arctic to paint. Their art became known throughout the world. By 1931, their influence was so widespread, there were even rumors of favoritism of their work from the National Gallery of Canada. The group no longer felt necessary to continue on. Their last exhibition as the Group of Seven was in December 1931. Included in the show were 24 invited contributors. In 1933, an announcement was made that the group would cease to exist in its current form. They would reinvent themselves as the Canadian Group of Painters, expanding to include more than 30 artists from across the country, 1/3 of which were women. The objective of the new group was to foster a closer cooperation between Canadian artists, as well as to encourage their creative expression. The Canadian Group of Painters exhibited annually until 1969, carrying on the legacy of the Group of Seven and continuing to develop the voice of Canadian art. Today, the work of the Group of Seven has come to symbolize the Canadian identity, reflecting an increasingly nationalistic sentiment. They defined an art movement, expressing the unique character of an entire country. So yeah, that's probably why you've heard of them. For more details, check out the caption below or visit our website at rookleys.com.